Morska, Undersea Sleuth, is a blue, a white, and a green for a 2/3 Vidalcan Fish Detective. Says you have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate, which is creating a clue token that sacrifices for 2 mana to draw a card. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Morska, Undersea Sleuth. This 3-color Precon commander from Murders at Karlov Manor has got a lot going on, and that's great for us that like to build commander decks, because that means that there are at least 3 ways we can build this commander deck. Strong swimmer, fun, and meme. Let's look at the strong, fun, and meme ways that I would build Morska, Undersea Sleuth.
Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat.
Big shout out to our sponsors on the channel that allow us to do this full time. Card Conduit, best place to sell your cards. TCG Player, best place to buy them. Dragon Shield, the best way to protect them. And Moxfield, the best way to list them on the internet. Go click on the links in the description. Do us a favor, make us look good to the sponsors. Click around down there and see what happens. My goal is to bring you one of these videos every week this year, and our patrons are where I'm going to go for suggestions when I need them. So go check out our Patreon, get involved with the channel on a deeper level, and get some cool perks along the way. With the strong build for Morska, we're going to lean into investigation and clue tokens. We're going to run cards like Tireless Tracker that are going to allow us to create even more clue tokens and double down on that strategy. A green and 2 for a 3/2 Human Scout says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate. And whenever you sack a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on Tireless Tracker. Sounds familiar. Our commander and this creature are doing very similar things, except Tireless Tracker. Every single time we play a land or ramp another land onto the battlefield, creating an extra clue, that is really good to have permanents doing this for us. Ongoing Investigation is another permanent that can do this for us. An enchantment for a blue and 1, whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, investigate, which is creating a clue. Then you can pay a green and 1 to exile a creature card from your graveyard to investigate and gain 2 life. We can continuously get clues onto the battlefield over and over again. How great to have an uncommon enchantment doing this much work for us and drawing this much attention from our opponents, and they're maybe going to have to answer it. That's awesome. Lonus, Cryptozoologist, is another legend that can run in the 99 of an investigate deck. This 2 mana 1/2 says whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, investigate, and you can tap it and sacrifice X clues to have target opponent reveal the top X cards of their library, and you get to put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield under your control straight up. So now our clues are leading to free permanents from our opponent's libraries. Really sweet payoffs and synergies with a deck like this. This mechanic has popped up a couple of times and has enough support to really get interesting with this build. Erdwall Illuminator, a blue and 1 for a 1/3 flyer. Whenever you investigate for the first time each turn, investigate an additional time. Now our commander's making 2 clues. This is fantastic. This is what we want to be doing. We need some payoffs though. We're creating a ton of clues. What are we doing with them? How about Tamio's Journal? At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. Okay. For a 5 mana artifact, that's okay. But tap it, sacrifice 3 clues, search your library for any card, and put that into your hand. Straight up, for just tapping in 3 clues. Tamio's Journal is an excellent way to go and get our finishers. And look, if we're going to be creating this many clues, let's run Academy Manufactor. I don't know how many times I can recommend this in a deck build, but this card just seems like it goes everywhere nowadays. Academy Manufactor, if you're creating a clue, food, or treasure token, you create one of each instead. So Morska is going to be creating a clue, a food, and a treasure alongside all of our other stuff that's creating clues. Going to be creating clue, food, and treasure. Ton of synergy rocking in this. And look, if you got some money, go get yourself an Anointed Procession. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. Here's a really expensive card, but it's like an aspirational goal for this deck because you probably end up needing it. Look, those clues, they are 2 mana to activate. So with Croclaran Ironworks, a 4 mana artifact that says sack an artifact, add 2 to your mana pool. Now, if we're just creating an overabundance of clues, we can sacrifice our clue, to create the activation cost to crack a different clue, and we don't even need mana to do this anymore. There's also a lot of combo-y shenanigans you can get up to with Croc Clan Ironworks, a very difficult permanence name to say over and over again in a video, but I love to be able to sack a clue to pay for the sacrifice of another clue so we can draw that card without using our mana if we need to. Mechanized Production, here's your end game right here. 2 blue, 2 other for an enchantment aura. Enchant artifact you control. We're going to enchant one of our clues. Let me tell you why. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then we're going to read this as though we put it on a clue, and that's what we have. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the name clue, you win the game. Boom, we're done. We just won because we're going to be getting 8 clues onto the battlefield for sure. That's going to be simple in this deck. Mechanized Production is going to let us win the game at our next upkeep. We're going to force them to answer either the clue token, the Mechanized Production, or get us out of the game. Beat us straight up there. I really like Antiquities War in this deck as well as a finisher. A blue and 3. The first 2 chapters are look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then this 3rd chapter, this is what we want here. Artifacts you control become artifact creatures with base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. So all of our clue tokens, our food tokens, our treasure tokens suddenly become 5/5s. And they've been on the battlefield, so they're ready to attack. We don't have to wait through another turn for them to be able to attack. They just get to it. Antiquities War kind of lets them see it coming, but it's also like, hey, look, my win condition's coming up. If you want to play a little more fair, run Antiquities War. If you want to play a little less fair, run Rise and Shine. We're playing the overload cost down here. 2 blue, 4 other, change target in the text to each. So it says for 6 mana, each non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on each artifact that became a creature this way. This isn't until end of turn. This just makes them creatures, and they are ready to attack and finish the game out. For the fun way to build this deck, we're going to lean into the fact that Morska says you have no maximum hand size, and we're just going to get shenanigans with it. We want an abundance, an overabundance of card draw in this deck, so Teferi's Ageless Insight, 2 blue, 2 other for a legendary enchantment. If you would draw a card except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. Yep, that sounds pretty excellent. Every time we crack a clue, we're going to get to draw 2 cards instead of just 1. This enchantment is totally worth it, but I'm talking abundance. Horn of Greed, 3 mana artifact. Whenever a player plays a land, that player draws a card. All right, now we are drawing even more cards on top. And yes, our opponents are going to get to do this as well, but we have no maximum hand size. We're prepared for this. Our opponents are not prepared to drink from a fire hose, which is what we're about to force them to do. We are ready to guzzle it all down. Do not clip that and send it to anybody. Azusa, Lost But Seeking. We're drawing a ton of cards. Let's dump the lands onto the battlefield. Let's not have our hand clogged up with lands when we're holding our entire library that we're trying to draw. We want to be dumping our lands onto the battlefield, and Azusa allows us to play 2 additional lands on each of our turns. Oracle of Moldiah. I almost called it Moracle, but that's what I call it privately to my secret friends. A green and 3 for a 2/2 elf shaman. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Play with the top card of your library revealed, and you can play lands from the top of your library. This is going to let us, if we're just doing this overabundance strategy and forcing everybody to draw a ton of cards, we're going to be able to dump our lands onto the battlefield and take advantage and make sure we're only drawing heat and no lands. No lands at all. We want to get those onto the battlefield. We've created an abundance of card draw. We've ramped it up. We're pushing our mana resources. Let's double that mana as well. Whenever a player taps a land for mana, that player adds 1 mana of any type that land produced. I promise you, at first your opponents are going to go, this is great. But after a while, they're going to start going, we need to start answering some of this stuff because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on over there. They seemed prepared for this. They came ready to play. And look, we're drawing all these cards. We're making all this mana. Let's have some payoffs. Min, Wily Illusionist, 2 blue and 1 for a 1/3 gnome wizard. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 blue illusion creature token with this creature gets +1/+0 for each other illusion you control. And whenever an illusion you control dies, you can put a permanent card with mana value less than or equal to that creature's power from your hand onto the battlefield. This is great. We're filling up our hand. We're drawing our library as much as we possibly can. We're creating illusions that hit really hard. if they are all grouped up together and the opponent lets them through. But if they want to block, they definitely kill them because they've only got 1 toughness. But that's okay, because if that was a 5/1, we can put a permanent card with 5 mana value or less from our hand onto the battlefield for free. Min really helps us with the card draw payoffs. And look, we want to go get a specific artifact from our deck, because what are we doing here? We're drawing a ton of cards. What are we trying to draw? How are we going to win? We're going to get Fabricate specifically so we can draw into our combo. Let me give you a little combo for this build. Filigree Sages, 1 blue, 3 other. 2/3, pay a blue and 2, untap target artifact, and you can just do that at will. You don't have to tap the Sages. Okay, so we've got Sages who can untap an artifact for a blue and 2 other. We're going to combine that with Chromatic Orrery. Says you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color, so that helps with our Filigree Sages. We need 1 blue and 2 other. We can tap Chromatic Orrery for 5 colorless mana that we can spend as though it were mana of any color. Are you seeing the combo now? So we tap Chromatic Orrery for 5. We use 3 of it to untap Chromatic Orrery via Filigree Sages, and now we've got infinite mana. Then we use Chromatic Orrery's ability here, pay 5, tap it, draw a card for each color among permanents you control. That means that now we have infinite mana, and we can, in a controlled way, draw our entire deck out. Then we just put something in there as simple as Concordant Crossroads. All creatures have haste. We dump our entire library of creatures onto the battlefield because we've drawn our entire deck and we have infinite mana. Now we've played them all. They all have haste, and we swing, and that should win us the game from drawing a lot of cards and making a ridiculous amount of mana. For the meme way that I want to build this, typically I go mean, but here I'm going meme because we're going Fish Voltron. In the spirit of the mean section being redone into meme, though, we are starting with Consecrated Sphinx, and let me tell you why. 2nd card each turn. That is what we want to do. Fish Voltron is going to allow us with Morska to put a lot of counters on itself if we draw a 2nd card each turn, so we can do that on our opponent's turn. Consecrated Sphinx is fantastic in a vacuum. Don't let anybody tell you that this card is not good in Commander. It's just kind of generically good in whatever deck you want to put it in that has these colors. However, in our deck in particular, it is very good because it says whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. That's going to allow us on each of our opponent's turns with Morska on the battlefield to put those counters on Morska, and Morska just keeps growing and growing and growing. And it's just 1 card to allow you to do that. There are a lot of cards that allow you to draw 2 cards during your opponent's turns, but Consecrated Sphinx, real easy to get out there, and it just immediately gets to work with our commander on the battlefield. With those +1/+1 counter strategies, hardened scales, cards like this, if you would put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on it instead. Let's grow Morska even more. We want to make a big, bad, fishy detective threat. That's what we're trying to do with the meme. There's a lot of good +1 counter cards that have come out recently too. Wave Goodbye. 2 blue, 2 other. Return each creature without a +1/+1 counter on it to its owner's hand. Cool, our commander stays, your blocking line is gone, and suddenly Morska is punching for commander damage, and we're just one-shotting opponents. We can also do some safety measures here. Ripples of Potential, a blue and 1 for an instant speed. Proliferate, that helps all of our counters get more and more and more. Then choose any number of permanents you control that had a counter put on them this way. Those permanents phase out. Suddenly, Morska, being targeted by some sort of Doomblade, phases out. The Doomblade fizzles, and we get to have a commander on the battlefield still when it goes to our turn. Because they unphase or phase back in, however it's supposed to be said, at the beginning of your next upkeep, so it becomes your creature again. Love Ripples of Potential in this deck, but look, if we're talking protection, let's double duty this up. Mother of Runes says target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Cool, so targeted spells, we're good to go, but protection from the color of your choice also affects blocking. If I have protection from red on my creatures and you only have red creatures, my creatures can't be blocked by your creatures. So Mother of Runes is going to let us, in a pinch, also act offensively with this protection and get Morska through for that one-shot commander damage that I was talking about. Cards like this can also help you get through their attacking lines. Spirit Mantle, a white and 1 enchanted creature has +1/+1 and protection from creatures. That means they can't be blocked ever, and it gets to block perfectly. Morska is a huge threat with Spirit Mantle on here. Love this one. And if we're trying to attack with just our Fish Detective and go Voltron on this, Finest Hour is fantastic. Our colors +2. Exalted, meaning whenever it attacks alone, it gets an additional +1/+1. Okay, cool. But this is the part that we like. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap that creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Yeah, baby. We're getting those commander damage hits in, and we're winning the game. It's Morska's finest hour, y'all. Everyone clap for Morska. Also, look, if we're running +1/+1 counters, we want some proliferate. We want some double the counters. There's lots of these types of effects. But look, Deep Glow Skate, 5 mana, 3/3 ETBs, double the number of each kind of counter on any number of target permanents. Cool. You do the math, because I don't want to. And look, Fleet Swallower, we need a big fish. We got Fleet Swallower. We need some fish finishers. Deep Glow Skate, it's another fish. Making Morska feel at home in the school, if you will. 2 blue, 5 other, 6/6. When it attacks, target player puts top half of his or her library rounded up into his or her graveyard. There we go. Big fish finisher. Let's go. When I show some ways to build, I also like to pimp the commander deck out, and there's not a special version of Morska outside of the regular versions with the art that you've seen, but the dragon shields that I would recommend for this, the Starry Night brushed art sleeves, these are just too good of a match. Look at this. Like, I know it's small right there, but look at the colors. You can see. That's such a good match for Morska. I was sometimes, you know, most of the time I'm just like, yeah, these would look good in a blue deck, but these art sleeves in particular look fantastic for Morska. Those are the 3 ways that I would build it. I've got a whole playlist going of 3 different ways to build a lot of different commanders. Go check it out. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't. I'm done. I'm out of here. See ya.